Welcome to your July 30th edition of Off the Mat. We have a lot in store for you guys. We've been gone for 2 weeks, so get ready for a great show. It's coming at you right now. All right, guys, welcome back. I'm Bernard Oliver, and that's John Urquio over there. Jeremy can't be with us today. He is working on another project. He's actually working on the Off the Mat website, which, man, if you haven't seen it, John, I've seen the layout of it. It's a nice video format for a website, nice little scrolling video bar at the top of the website. It looks really good. Jeremy showed me little schematics, I guess you can call it. It looks really good. We've been working on that. Been working on getting some contacts and some other things going. That's why we've been gone for a couple weeks. Plus, hasn't really been a slow time in MMA. MMA doesn't really have a slow time. It's always fast-paced. There's always things going on. But this week, Fedor versus Henderson. Goodness, I'm so ready for this fight. Been waiting for it since they announced it. Since Fedor's last loss, I mean, it was kind of like, man, it's a bad way for him to go out. And for him to come back and fight a champion, maybe he'll take the belt. I feel like he'll take the belt, but we'll get to that later in the show. John, I didn't ask how you doing today, man.
I'm doing great. It's good to be back. Had a nice little layoff. I'm also pretty pumped about the website. Finally, all of our millions of fans can get our picks and a little bit more easy access to our videos.
All right, and speaking of picks, we're going to have a couple of picks posted up on uatvonline.net in the Off the Mat section under sports that you guys can go look at before the card tonight, so you guys make sure to check that out. But getting into this first fight, a fight that I'm really excited about, it's getting a lot of buzz, Paul Daley versus Tyron Woodley. Now, John, I believe you said before the show you feel like Woodley's going to take it. He is undefeated, and Daley has lost his last two fights. I'm a huge Paul Simtex fan, man. I love Simtex Daley. He's one of the first fighters. I always tell people he's one of the first guys I saw fight when I first started watching MMA. I'm not going to let the fandom get in the way of my pick for this fight, but coming off of two losses, I just kind of feel like that he's going to pick it up. The Diaz loss was a bit of a surprise to him. He really didn't think that the fight should have been stopped. Some people thought it shouldn't have. Some people thought it should. I remember we had a pretty nice discussion about that last time on the show, and we talked about Paul Daley and Nick Diaz. But kind of drop some eyes on why you think Tyron's going to win.
Well, a lot of people, they look at an undefeated record and they assume, he must be worth something. But this is a guy who's worked for what he's gotten. He's a great athlete, and more so, I think that Daley is in decline. That's why this fight is going to go Woodley's way. Paul Daley hasn't been one of my favorite guys. Very, habitual trash talker. He's always had problems with Dana White. They've had their drama going back and forth. Now he's in Strikeforce, really looking at maybe one of his last chances to make a statement, to tell the world that he is a worthy fighter, that he should be in, mixed martial arts at the top level. But I don't know if he's got it here. He really is going to be fighting for his career almost, coming off of two big losses and made him look very bad in those two losses. Koscheck, very poor sportsmanship, landed him in Strikeforce, what he's, his situation now. And then, he losing his last fight to Nick Diaz, which, is no slouch. This is a guy who battled throughout the whole fight. But it just seems like he's lost a step, and I think Woodley's going to be able to take advantage.
That's actually a very interesting angle. Him losing his step is kind of, it kind of seems like Jeremy always says that light switch is just kind of going off a little bit earlier than it used to. And he took a lot of damage from Nick Diaz, and he gave a lot of damage to Diaz, but you know how the Diaz brothers are, man. You can't really tell there's any damage going in that fight. So, I mean, like you said, decline, I don't want to say he's declining. I don't feel like he's declining. He's just hit a rough spot. Maybe needs to go train, get a little, reformat his game a little bit, find Paul Daley and where Paul Daley used to be, find the Simtex from, separate that from Paul Daley, bring that Simtex back into the name. He still has bone-crushing haymaker punches. And I just don't see him losing this fight to Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley's an up-and-coming guy. It's going to be a good fight. It's definitely going to be a good fight. That's one that you don't want to miss. And I mean that to the fullest. You don't want to miss Tyron Woodley versus Paul Daley, and that's just one. That's one of the first fights on the card. But moving on, before the break, we're going to go into Tim Kennedy and Robbie Lawler. And last time we talked about Robbie Lawler, we were really excited about the fight. He was fighting Jeremy and I always fight over this name, but I believe it's Jacare Souza. I always call him Jacare because I think it's cooler. But Ronaldo Jacare Souza got him in a rear naked choke. It was a very nasty submission. Souza looked really good in that fight. He's actually going to fight September 10th in Strikeforce 30. But going back to Lawler, I think Lawler's looking for a redeemer here against Tim Kennedy. Tim Kennedy coming out, I believe, Austin, Texas. Texas boy. Kennedy is another one of those guys that you might not necessarily hear a lot about. But, Lawler's definitely looking for a redeemer here, looking to get his name back on that short list of guys going to the UFC. I'm sure he wants to be on that list as soon as Strikeforce is done with. John, what's your take on the fight?
Well, I like Lawler. I think he's a very unique fighter. Definitely has heart, and like you were saying, he's got to come back here and put a W in the column, make sure that he's not forgotten in the mix. He's unfortunately not the king, Jerry Lawler. No relation there. Maybe it would have helped him move forward a little bit quicker. But I think that he is one hell of a fighter, and this is going to be a good fight. I think people are sleeping on this, and I think it's going to be one of the better fights of the night. Definitely not going to the cards. Man,
speaking of sleeping, I feel like people are sleeping on this fight card. Like, I don't think that people understand that the deepness of this card is pretty good. Especially, for a Strikeforce card, kind of going out of business with the UFC picking them up and that kind of thing. People aren't really speaking a lot about the undercard, or not really the undercard, the main card, under Fedor and Dan Henderson. They're not really speaking a lot of these fights. Even the women's welterweight championship bout isn't getting a lot of love. And I feel like people need to really pay attention to Strikeforce. You're an MMA fan, you really need to be paying the MMA, period. Bama, shark fights, anybody, any of those, Dream, you need to be paying to K1, all that stuff. When a fight card comes out, you really should pay attention to it because you never know what you're going to see from those new guys that you haven't heard of. You never know who's going to win that fight. You saw that in Tito versus Ryan Bader. I mean, you never know who's going to win.
Absolutely. Well, and recently, the past couple UFC cards have been so amazing, so many big names, that I think this kind of trumps a little bit of, the Strikeforce card. That's the situation that we're having. It seems like Dana is finding a way to put good fighters that, maybe trying to build their name up. Not to mention, if you put Fedor and Henderson, finally Dana gets a fight to put Fedor in. And, that's, I think, the main reason why, fans are overlooking the rest of this great card is because you've got two legends of the sport, two titans, coming together and meeting. And, that can kind of trump all these other great fights, just not nearly the buzz that they deserve.
Right. Good point, John. Well, we're going to take a break here, guys. When we come back, we're going to finish out the card, give you a couple of updates. We're going to keep the show short this week, We're doing about a 15-minute. We're going to call it the Off the Mat Update. Let's do that. I like that. It's a good name. So when we come back from break, guys, we'll finish the card out, and we'll talk women's MMA and the Fedor Dan Henderson main event. Welcome back to Off the Mat. This is our second half of our Off the Mat Update show. We're only doing a 15-minute show for you guys this week, and we're going to go right back into the card. Fedor versus Dan Henderson. Now, the next fight on the card is a women's MMA fight. It is Melores Conan versus Miesha Tate. Now, if you don't watch a lot of women's MMA, which you should if you don't, Conan is actually the welterweight women's champion at 135. I think she lost to Cyborg Santos recently, and at the higher weight class, and she dropped down, came to welterweight, and she's kind of been running the table. She's out of the Netherlands, which always kind of reminds me of like the Overeem brothers, because they're from the Netherlands. Well, maybe the good one, not the bad one. But Miesha Tate is another top women's MMA fighter out of Strikeforce. Really excited for this fight. Like I really don't feel. I feel like women's MMA doesn't get a lot of love, especially with Strikeforce going out of business sooner than in the next year or so. Dana White's always said UFC will never have a women's division, and I think that's that's a mistake, because you have a lot of fighters, a lot of women fighters that are coming out of Strikeforce who are caliber fighters, who are good fighters, who are going to put on a good show. I mean, you're supposed to have the return of Gina Carano sometime soon. We don't know when that's going to happen, but sometime that's supposed to happen. You have Melores Conan, you have, of course, Christian Santos. You just have a lot of. It's a really deep. It's not deep, but there's a lot of caliber women fighters that come out of the Strikeforce brand, And I really think that they need to, kind of bring that to UFC. Maybe even pull some girls out of Bellator. There's a couple of girls in Bellator that really kind of kick butt in the ring, and I just don't want to really see it go away. Never really been a fan of not having women's MMA division just because it's just more fights to put on a card.
Absolutely. These women, are superior athletes, and they deserve to be, a spectacle. It's not any less of a quality fight or watching the talent or the athleticism that these women have. And it's a shame Dana White's, it's his decision to keep a sport, with men, singular, keep it divided. And I would hope that he would move forward and maybe when Strikeforce starts to come down, maybe create his own women's division or league to put them in, because it's only hurting the UFC, hurting mixed martial art fans because they're holding back being able to watch these talented people. So I think that hopefully, eventually, as time grows, as the sport grows, then different sects of the sport will grow, and eventually there will be a lot more women involved in mixed martial arts.
Yeah, and I believe that too. And Dana White has always gone on record as saying, the fans make a lot of decisions. They have a lot of they have a lot of weight when he's making a decision as something like this. With the Strikeforce being absorbed and that kind of thing, fans really had a huge, input on that. And he kept them around. Like he said, he could have just axed it when they took over Strikeforce, and he didn't. A lot of fans didn't want to see that. There's a lot of fights. There's a lot of good fights that have happened since then. That would have been just tremendously bad for the sport if he would have axed it. So maybe he'll listen to the fans. Maybe there's a couple of groups out there signing petitions. Dana keep women's MMA. So maybe we'll see that. Who you got in the fight? You got Conan or you got Tate?
I got to go with the champ. Keeping the belt in Conan. And to tell you the truth, I think that hopefully the sport will. It's a highlight. Right under the main event, and it should be a very exciting fight. I think it's going to kind of get the attention out there that women can do it too.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go ahead and go with Conan too. She's a very talented fighter. Tate is no slouch either, but Conan has held on to that belt. I really feel like she's losing to Cyborg Santos is like losing to Tyson in his heyday. Everybody loses to Tyson in his heyday. Nobody's messing with him. So I feel like she lost that fight, and she's done nothing but show how much of a great athlete she is, how much she doesn't want to lose, holding on to that belt. Can't wait to see this fight tonight either. We're gonna move ahead. We're gonna go ahead and move ahead to the go ahead and move ahead. I don't even know where that came. That's like a double positive or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, Dan Henderson versus Fedor Emelianenko. Now this fight is the fight that everybody's been looking forward to. And once you heard it announced, it was like, man, you couldn't give Fedor a better opponent than that. That is what we want to see. That's who we want to see him fight. Now, Fedor coming into this fight is at 223. He weighed in at 223. Dan Hendo weighed in at 207. So now you get to see Fedor be the bigger guy in a fight instead of being that little guy that, kind of whoops the big guys or loses to Antonio Silva. Now you get to see Fedor be the bigger guy, and I really feel like it's going to come out and it's going to help him with that weight.
Absolutely. Well, you're looking here at MMA fans' exact idea of two gladiators in the middle of the ring. Just take a look at them. That big puffball Fedor. You could just imagine armor all over him with Hendo coming at him, swinging that chain. The mace coming right at him. I think that this is just going to be an epic fight. This is two warriors. They've had long, great careers, legends in the sport already. And you put two guys that really kind of match up well against each other. Fedor definitely, a little bit higher of an echelon in the fighting world. But Hendo, been around forever, has had countless fights, comebacks. It's just going to be entertaining. And this is exactly what MMA loves. What all the fans want to see is two guys, two warriors that have been through everything, done everything, won titles, the gold. They've had ups and downs, and now Fedor coming off of a loss. We don't get to see that much.
Yes.
Somebody is going to be, there's going to be a fire burning in that last emperor, and I think that this is going to be one for the books for sure.
I definitely feel you on that. Well, guys, we're about to get out of here. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna do lock 'em up, knock 'em out. For my lock 'em up, I am gonna take Mallory's Conan. I really feel like she's gonna submit Tate. It's a championship fight. people want to see a great show, and these fighters want to put on these great shows like you were talking about earlier. They get those contracts, get those, show people that MMA is the next big thing. I feel like she's going to come out. She's going to give her a couple nice combos. She's going to tap her out. For who do you have for your lock 'em up?
I lock him up. I got to go with The Last Emperor. I think he is, he's just unbelievable. And to be that big and have such a good ground game and grappling game, and I think that's that's how the fight's gonna turn out. It's gonna end up in a submission.
Good. That's actually I was thinking of doing that for my knock him out, but I'm gonna take my boy Simtex Daily in my knock him out. I feel like he's gonna knock out Tyron Woodley. I don't feel like it's gonna go to the cards. One of them's gonna knock the other one out. I don't see any submissions. I see them coming out. I see them brawling. And I think Daly's going to take that fight by KO. John, who you got in your KO?
I am going to have to go with Tim Kennedy getting knocked out by Mr. Ruthless Lawler.
Wow, that's a good pick too, man. That's going to do it for us this week. If you guys want to go out, go on uatvonline.net, check under sports, go to Off the Mat, and you'll see our write-ups. You'll see the ones from 132, and then you'll see the ones from this card. We're doing 2 this time for you guys. 2 notable fights to be on the lookout for. We're going to do our picks on that. Probably going to be pretty similar to our lock 'em up, knock 'em out. So that's going to do it for us this week, guys. I'm Bernard Allen from John Okuyo. And until next time, we'll see you at the fights.